Sup, everybody? So I'm sitting here, special day. Shane, who y'all all remember from the interview the other day, he lives in the area. I actually knew this a long time ago, but I guess we never really got around to meeting up or whatever. But now that I'm gonna be leaving soon, I kind of was like, hey, let's make an extra special effort to just hang out. And plus, since he's kind of hot off the presses with his interview with Daniel or whatever, I know everybody wants to hear what he has to say some more or whatever, right? So anyway, we met up today, and basically we just kind of came here to the park, just kind of going for a walk and talk or whatever. So we spent the last hour just kind of walking and chatting about all sorts of topics or whatever. And then after this, we're gonna go get some pho because it's the best thing ever, and kind of call it a bro trip or whatever. And maybe I'll see him again in a couple of years or something, right? But trying to make that last ditch effort or whatever to see as many people as I can. So anyway, one of the things that we were talking about, which I found really interesting, and it's something I'm getting more and more into as of late, and it's kind of like the brain wave states or whatever. So there's beta, delta, theta, gamma, some other one that I'm forgetting or whatever, right? And they're the kind of various states of consciousness or whatever. And actually one of the things Shane kind of mentioned in his last video is kind of the astral projection kind of stuff. And I started looking into the techniques on how to do that yourself, because you can consciously astral project if you know what you're doing. But there's a lot of ways to get to that point. But one of the common denominators is that you're in this mastered theta brain state or whatever, right?
Yeah, about mastering your brain waves and really just taking the reins on them. Steering the ship on
so
them.
I was kind of asking him about that or whatever, but then it kind of just opened up the concept of what the brain's wave states are or whatever, and how it's so measurable. They have the EKGs and they can do all this kind of stuff, and they'll take these monks or whatever, and they'll put them under these things and they'll monitor it, and it kind of, they're just they have various functions. It's all things, and even the chakras or whatever, right?
It's like all your gears. If you have a really fancy car, it's like putting a gear here, making sure this knob is flipped, this this lever's doing this dial's on.
There you go.
It's really, really reining in and making that brain, your perception of reality in such a way.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to
and it's something that I probably should know more about, but I'm still just kind of getting around to the subject or whatever. So Shane has a little bit more of a thought on it. And some of that's just from his crazy research that he does, you know what I mean? He's a total nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff or whatever, right? Some of it I think is because he's a musician, and they talk about going into certain brainwave states to facilitate the flow and the creative energy and things like that. So he naturally has an inclination towards this kind of stuff. Plus he just seems like he's kind of naturally has his brain works in a way where he just comprehend and understand the stuff and relate to it really well. And everybody has those certain things that they're just really good at connecting with, or getting in touch with, then communicating the message to everybody else. So anyway, Shane, maybe you kind of just walk us through the brainwave states and kind of how you see them and how they should be in your how they function for everybody.
The importance of maybe paying attention to what you can do to change your brainwaves.
Yeah, well, even just kind of just a base, what are they? There's five kind of what they are or whatever. When do they typically show up in your life? What do they serve? What purpose do they serve or whatever? And then maybe more of the optimal way of living would be to be here, and here, or whatever.
So the brainwaves pretty much govern, they dictate the way you perceive reality at all times. So probably chances are, if you're listening to this video, you're probably in some sort of beta dominance in your brainwaves. You're actively paying attention, you're taking in concepts, ideas, and you're juggling all this information in your mind at one time, and that's fantastic, and you definitely need that. But especially for a lot of us that are interested in healing, the mind, body, spirit, emotions, and everything, the brainwaves also play a huge role in just how you perceive everything in front of you, what you're thinking about. All your relationships can be altered via your brainwaves and what kind of state your brainwaves are in. So, for example, how they relate to your life. For everyone listening, this is kind of a blanket statement. I guess it might not be as simple as this, but you'd probably want to have alpha dominance at all times, and that's very important because that's the state where you're in max functionality. All of your athletes, all of your musicians, all of your brilliant, Bob Ross, when he's sitting there painting his little trees and everything, he's an alpha. You can tell just the stroke of the brushes, you can tell he's so in tune in that alpha brainwave, 8 to 12 hertz. If Bob Ross were to be stressed out, and you'd see him being antsy and, maybe he's tense in the posture and everything, he's more in beta dominance, he's not going to paint those little trees the same way, right? So his entire work is governed off of how his brain's functioning, how relaxed it is, how tense it is, and everything. So I think that's really important for anyone listening to try to master your brainwaves. Try to be kind of like martial artists, so they try to master the mind, master the body. You should do the same with your brainwaves. For anyone listening, if you do any meditation exercises, you've probably realized, or you've read that you need to go into like a more alpha, theta brain states. That's where you're
Well, hold on.
relaxed.
Before we go into this, let's break down. Like, there's certain types. I think it's delta, theta, beta. No, alpha, beta, gamma. Right.
Gamma at the top. Gamma's the really.
So we'll start with the sleeping one, delta.
Delta.
So
when you're in the REM sleep, or you're in that deep restorative sleep, you got delta brainwaves going. Your brain is in such a low active state that it can actually clear out metabolites from the day. It can detoxify. The brain has its own detoxification system. It's called the glymphatic pathway. Not lymphatic pathway, but the glymphatic pathway. The only way it can open up is if the brain actually relaxes, all the body's tension ceases, and the glymphatic pathways can actually open up, and almost like it siphons the day's worth of metabolites out of the brain. Okay. It's pretty crazy. There's not enough research on that. I wish there was more. Yeah. But that's all I can say about that.
Okay, so there's the delta, and then we're going to get to the theta. So the theta is...
Theta's kind of like, for any of you, when you're waking up, maybe around 5, 6 a.m., you're waking up early. You start the stretching, you're so comfy, you don't even want to get out of bed. And you're maybe still rubbing your eyes and stuff. You're probably in a theta wave. It's when you've really yet to start your day. It's super relaxed. Everyone knows it. It's before you're pouring your coffee and everything. You're nice and sleepy. Yeah. So that's theta. You can be conscious in theta, or you can be kind of mid-sleep in theta.
Almost like a trance state.
It's very trancey. Yeah. Bruce Lipton, for anyone that likes Bruce Lipton, he talks about the first 7 years of your life, you're kind of in a theta state. Yeah. You're just rapidly learning. You see your parents do this, you add it to the books.
You're like a big sponge.
You're a big sponge. Yeah. Huge sponge.
Very influential those first 7 years.
Yeah, so a lot of hypnotherapy is about putting you in that theta state, and you just take in what you hear, and you just
And then let's see, then there's like an alpha state.
There's alpha, so that's where, that's like calm relaxation, but you're still aware. You can still function.
It's more zen. It's very kind
zen.
It's getting into the zen mindset. Things don't stress you out. Yeah, you don't react too much.
There's pretty much no stress.
Yeah.
There's almost no stress.
It's like you're in the, I think you said it's like when you're in
the flow. It's the flow states. Yeah. People that study the flow states, in the zone.
Yeah, in the zone.
Like when athletes are throwing their, those passes that are just game winning, they click into some sort of brain state.
Yeah. So that's like an idea. Now, then there's the beta, right?
There's the beta. That's your more active, problem solving. You're thinking about things. If you're planning a business, you probably got all these spreadsheets and notes everywhere, and if you're jumping around all the time.
Yeah.
That's more beta.
Yeah. And probably, I think one of the things that we do as humans, especially today, is we're mostly in that beta.
Everyone's mostly in beta.
Yeah, and talk about how that can, kind of stress you out a little bit.
Well, beta, just like all the other ones, it's very useful, and it's there for a reason. It's so we can actually function. If we didn't have any of that beta, wavelength that we were activating on, we'd all just be kind of like really chill, holy vegetables. We wouldn't be getting much done, but sure, we'd be very relaxed.
Yeah, I guess before you go too much farther than that, I guess one thing we touched on too is all these brain wave states, they all serve a function. It's kind of like your chakra system, right? You got to have a little bit of a survival component or whatever, and you got to have a little bit of your solar plexus control component to it, and you got to have your throat and your higher thinking and your God chakra and all that kind of stuff. They all kind of serve each other, and everything's kind of like a balance or whatever. Right?
Exactly.
Obviously, anybody on nutritional balancing, it has balancing in the name, for crying out loud. We kind of get the fact that there's a balance, but there's also a most optimal state of being. So anyway, sorry to get back on
no worries. So
beta.
So one thing that nutritional balancing focuses on a lot, is lowering that sympathetic nervous system activity. And beta brainwaves and sympathetic nervous system activity are one and the same. If your sympathetic system's activated, you feel threatened, feel stressed out. Those beta waves are cranking, trying to problem solve that. So that's no way to live. You want to mellow it down to the alpha waves, and that's when you're nice and zinny.
Yeah. And then I think the last one, which I guess we know less about, is gamma. Right?
Gamma's ultra super consciousness. Okay. So as you notice, as we keep going up, it's more attention to detail as you keep going up. Yeah. You go from complete sleep to drowsy to relaxed awareness to stressed.
Yeah.
To you can go all the way up to gamma, which is ultra awareness.
Right.
And what I was trying to explain earlier, the monks, they're not only dominant in the theta brainwaves, but they also mix it. So like I said, it's a bunch of levers and gears. So some can be more active and others might be less active. but they're mixing massive increased universal awareness with the relaxation.
Yeah.
Which is why they're so zen, but their realm of consciousness is so expanded.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So yeah, it's pretty interesting, and I think it's just another layer of understanding. So as you like kind of get more familiar with these things, it kind of gives you goals and objectives. So you're like, oh, I need to learn more about this alpha state. No, I want to be into it.
Like when you know what they feel like, you can go into a meditation session and say, okay, I'm probably more, the beta waves are cranking right now. I can't relax.
Yeah.
But if you can get in that point where you're almost you almost don't even feel time.
Yeah.
You're probably reaching those lower brain waves, and it feels really good.
Yeah.
So
Shane said he's like a musician of sorts, so he'll play a lot of guitar. And sometimes he'll get in that alpha trance, and he'll just be like, I don't know, Led Zeppelin over here on the guitar or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Jimi Hendrix. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
What's your style?
Shoot.
John Mayer.
I love metal.
Oh, metal.
Any and all things metal.
Like Avenged Sevenfold style.
Like the more extreme metals that annoy people.
So what do you think of? So that's actually. What do you think about that? Because like me personally, I have a hard time listening to music that I used to listen to, like kind of more like top 40 kind of stuff, because it kind of comes off as like very low vibe or whatever, or it's some sort of, and like I believe this, I'm sure a lot of people do, it's sort of a pseudo programming. It puts you in like a little bit of a trance, and they program some of these ideas into you, and they're not as like for your highest good. They're kind of more, I don't know, less moral things or whatever. But like metal, a lot of people would obviously be like, that's like pretty extreme stuff. Even like normies
the
would
public,
be like,
the public opinion is not very good with metal.
Yeah.
But I don't, there's been a time and a place where I kind of intellectually observe it like you just did.
Yeah.
Where I say, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, it could be this, conceptually.
Sure.
That's what this is.
Yeah.
But then I kind of just gave all that up because it's too tiring to think about all that.
Sure.
So I go with feeling.
Sure.
Call me crazy. No. But if something instills, like, if it makes me excited, I like it.
Right.
I don't care. It could be, like you said, some sort of pseudo-programming.
Sure.
I don't care if it makes me happy, whatever.
Yeah, well, there's something, and I've heard this too, because I've asked people about this. Like, if you're aware and conscious of whatever, and you're
you make your own
it,
decisions.
you just kind of, like, you just see that stuff come by. You don't really let it, like,
you see it
get
through the
to
veil.
You
see it through any veils there are.
Right.
And you enjoy it for what it is. Yin and yang.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like, again, like a higher level of mastery is just, like, everything's neutral
Exactly,
anyway,
like the
right?
Taoists.
Yeah, exactly.
I really like the Taoists because they realize there's a time and place for everything.
Yeah.
Everything goes. You can, as long as you're aware, you can do this, you can do that, as long as you understand what you're doing, why you're doing it.
Now, I think you mentioned to me previously, like you kind of are, you're into the Taoist stuff, some of the Taoist meditations and energy work or whatever. So that's right? You were describing some sort of energy work where you're moving energy up and doing something that maybe Dr. Wilson doesn't recommend, but could you maybe like describe that a little bit more?
So like, I definitely like what Dr. Wilson talks about with the whole, we're already too up, we're already too yin. So definitely yang it up a little bit, push it down. Not yang it up. That's kind of that's a misnomer.
Yeah. Yang it down, bro.
Yang it down. Excuse me. But there's definitely a time and place for that. I think, and this just works for me. I'm not telling anyone what to do. I just like talking, and people like hearing me talk, so I might as well talk. I think you should kind of control it instead of just being almost repressive and just going down, down, down. I want to know what it feels like when it goes from down to up. You know what I'm saying? I want to master. It's all about mastery. I want to master every level of it. I want to know what it's like when it's up. If I want to push it up, I want to push it up.
Right.
If I want it to go down, I want it to go down. So I like exploring every level possible.
I mean, they kind of talk about this too, like it's a biblical concept or whatever. Where like it was like Jesus, a guy like came to him and he was talking about how like basically the guy could relate to Jesus because he was like a army general or whatever. Right, and he said like when I command my people to do something as a general, they do it, right? So there's like a level of commandmentship that you have over certain things. So like as you become a master, you can command all these elements versus like a controlling aspect to it, where that's more of a fear-based paradigm, where it's like you're trying to control something so it doesn't get out of hand or whatever, versus like commanding it and telling it what to do, and you're willing it up and down or whatever.
Exactly.
Right?
And then like I feel like
back on that Taoist meditation where you're moving the kind of up and down. Explain it a little bit more, kind of what you use it for.
Oh well, I just wanted to add one thing.
Sure.
So like, I'm sure a lot of us have come across the concept we're not the mind or our body. You know what I'm talking about? We're not the mind or the body. We're just some sort of consciousness that maybe we're bound to this vessel somehow.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of explanations and theories, and they're all really interesting to read. You can get lost for hours at night reading all this stuff. But that's all it is. It's almost life should be kind of fun and just kind of exploration, adventure, experience.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do anything and everything. That's why I'm eating raw meat, for God's sake. Like, I'm told not to do it, and I'm like, well, who's telling me not to do that? I don't believe you.
Yeah.
So I go and do it, and it works out.
Yeah, yeah.
So just anything like that, just experience as much as you can.
For sure.
But the Taoist energy work. So it's not really. I mean, there's a lot of parallels to Dr. Wilson's and Roy Master's meditation and things like that.
He talks about like the Tao and the Tao, so he kind of relates to it a little bit in some of his articles.
A little bit. Yeah, I mean, they made the whole yin yang concept.
Yeah.
Or at least it originated somewhere in ancient China.
Yeah.
Ancient East.
I think you're right. Yeah.
But they don't really necessarily believe that the body's polarized. I mean, maybe they do, but they don't allude to it in any of their texts. But they believe there's some sort of vessel. And again, it applies to the yin-yang principle. There's a beginning of the channel and into the channel, and
Alpha
part
and
of it,
Omega, basically.
Alpha, Omega, the microcosmic, the macrocosm, part of it goes down, the rest of it goes up the spine.
Yeah.
So it's still yin and yang, it's still macrobiotic, it's still very applicable. And there's been times in my life where I really felt, with my energy work, doing that was so infinitely valuable to me that I just can't dismiss it.
Right.
Like, I can't say, oh, this other person's work is the truth.
Yeah.
I have to try everything. So that's my favorite that I've tried.
Yeah.
The pushing down exercise still works wonders.
Yeah.
So I don't exclusively do that.
What does it do for you though? Like when you're doing the up down kind
It's-
of work? Are you just like I think what is it called, like Venapasal or something? Some meditation starts with a V.
Oh, Visapana?
Yeah, it's something like, and basically you're supposed to kind of like bring awareness to certain parts of your body.
There's a lot of
so
that.
you're obviously going like up, and it's some sort of body scan. It's something about when you get awareness towards something, you can give it healing or.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. So like with the pushing down, there's the theory that the body is polar. It's polar.
Polarized.
It's polarized and it's polar charged. So if you, almost like a battery. So if you have that electrical current going through it as it should, then you have maximum healing in all cells. But then there's also the thought of individual healing, like you just mentioned, bringing awareness to certain areas. That's why, for example, if I were to just punch you right in the chest, you're going to go,
Yeah.
and you're going to think about that pain right there, and you're going to focus on it. There's almost like you're focusing on your pain.
Yeah.
And you have to do that psychologically too, like to heal it, you got to feel it. So to get it out of your consciousness and come to terms with it, you got to let the pain come up and you got to feel that, just like if I punched him.
Yeah.
It's the exact, the mind is the body. So,
Right. Yeah.
so I don't know, the Taoist work, it appeals to me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's all it's got to do. If I'm explaining this and it doesn't tickle your fancy, then you don't have to mess with
Right.
it. So.
And I think I've tried to explain that a little bit on this channel sometimes. It's like, don't get me wrong, like a lot of us are here because of Dr. Wilson and the MB stuff, but at the same time, I did call it Malkuth specifically for a reason that I wanted it to be more indicative of everybody's journey. As everybody moves through their journey, they come across different things. And, even Dr. Wilson says question everything, and he even is open to changing the program if he finds out new procedures that seem to work or whatever, right? That. However, Dr. Wilson wisely, in my opinion, will give a kind of a roadmap that's very conservative and more safe for the masses.
Very
you know
safe.
what I mean?
It's very safe.
Yeah, it's instead of, because he doesn't get the opportunity. There's so many people. You're not going to get the opportunity to work with everybody on a one-on-one basis. So he gives it in that way. And, definitely respect that. And I definitely feel like I'm actually really blessed that I came across his work because of that aspect, or because you get into a lot of people and they get like all excited about all these new things or whatever, and and then they're going crazy, but it can cause problems for some people too, right? So it's like just trying to be grounded and centered with everything that you do or whatever, right? And it kind of, I think in the long run will benefit you or whatever.
Yeah, ultimately it sounds like you got to do a lot of things in nutritional balancing, but ultimately it's do less.
Yeah.
Ultimately is do less. It's just stick with the basics, and the basics work the best. So.
Yeah, so anyway, I think that's pretty good. I think this is a pretty good little discussion. The only question I got to ask you, because everybody wants to know, is if you're an alien or not.
Yes. Yes, I am. I just don't have any any knowledge.
Doesn't have any origin story or whatever.
Like Superman, he doesn't know he's from Krypton.
Oh, yeah, there you go. So when the aliens invade and they're like, it's just like Dragon Ball. You're basically Kakarot. So when Vegeta comes to the planet and he's like Kakarot, and you don't even know what he's talking about. You were supposed to come here and actually enslave humanity, but now you're freeing humanity. Yeah, it'd be like a real life Dragon Ball Z.
I wish. Hey, life's what you make it.
Yeah.
Man, I'm gonna manifest that. I'm gonna work on that later.
Okay, cool. I'll be Krillin, I guess, because I'm bald, right? A little too tall though.
No, you can be Piccolo.
What's
your name?
what?
We eat
Tien?
so many vegetables.
I'll be Tien. He's got the third eye going.
Well, if you keep eating all the vegetables you're eating,
I
you'll be
might
Piccolo.
turn green. Piccolo's pretty awesome. He's probably like my favorite because he's so tactical about everything or whatever, right? So anyway, that's it. So thanks, and we'll talk later.